This boat can outmaneuver everything. You can deal in inches instead of feet with a Saxdor. This boat outruns a lot of boats in its class. It runs nicer in rough water than boats in its class. And it has a profile that it doesn't matter if we're sitting at the Hyatt, the Ritz, or any marina in all of South Florida, it stands apart from the rest of the crowd. I mean, it does, that's the truth.
After moving to Florida and deciding to buy a boat, I ended up doing a bunch of research and ended up buying this 2024 Saxdor 320 GTO almost 6 months ago. So today I wanted to give you guys an honest review of this boat. And I know a lot of you on the RV channel are probably a little disappointed that I didn't buy a big 45-foot diesel pusher motorhome like we're normally reviewing, but I'll have to explain why I bought a boat instead later. And let's take a quick look around. So up front here we have this sunbed, and right now we're kind of in the middle of the bay here in Sarasota, Florida, and the boat is staying in the same place because this boat has the skyhook option. So right into the negatives as we go around. I'm 6'2", and I can't get into the cockpit without having to duck my head down, and that was something that my salesman did make me aware of. But as I was mentioning, we've got the skyhook going here. So if you look in the back, as the tides change, the motors are going to be moving around to keep us in the same place. Now, I've had a few issues with this boat that I want to talk about, give you guys all the good and the bad. And keep in mind, you know, I review RVs for a living, so when I purchased this boat, I spent way too much time going to boat shows, touching and feeling different boats, and I want to share with you why I chose this boat over other boats in this same price range. Now, the new Saxdor 320 GTOs, on their website, it says that they're about 200 grand. Now, we're in the United States here in Florida, where I don't know if there's shipping costs or what, but they get a lot more expensive when they come to Florida. So this boat was a lot more than 200 grand. It was more in the $300,000 price range. I did buy it pre-owned with 40 hours on it. You may notice those twin Mercury 300s back there dancing around a little bit to keep us in place. Now, that was one of the issues that I did have, is I was running those too hard when I first bought the boat. It's just so easy to hit the skyhook, and one day it was, see how they just moved there to keep us in the right place? One day it was really rough out there and I ran it on the skyhook, and with those motors moving around, it did give me an error message where I lost my steering. Now, fortunately, this boat does have bow thrusters, so even though I lost my steering, I was basically able to steer the boat with just the bow thrusters, was able to get it back to shore without problem. And the folks at MarineMax here in Sarasota got that fixed pretty quickly for me. It was a pretty easy fix. So that is part of boating. You know, even with a 2024, sometimes if you're running certain options too hard, they're not really built to be able to handle that. So when I talk to a few people in the industry, they recommend that I don't run the skyhook for more than 10 or 20 minutes, just because when you're just throttling those constantly, it is wear and tear on the engines. I've got so much more I want to show you guys, but let's go for a little ride. One of the reasons I bought this boat was I saw the Naughty Styles YouTube video, and they called this a fast yacht or something like that. I'd call it a boat more than a yacht, but it does go about 50 miles an hour. And the way that this boat is built, the hull really cuts through the waves. I had some friends on here the other day, and we were hitting a pretty big wave at a high speed, and everybody was bracing. They thought we were going to really get shaken up, but this boat cuts right through the waves. They are built in Poland and they're designed in Finland, so I think they've got some pretty gnarly waters up in that part of the world, so they're built to be able to handle pretty rough waters. And what I was told was that the guy that owned Axopar boats, a really cool kind of center console style boat, a lot of you have seen those Brabus Axopars, the guy that owned that company sold it and then started Saxdor. Well, I don't want to run this skyhook too long because I don't want that to break again, but let's go for a quick little ride here. Let's get it up to speed, and I want to show you around the boat, show you in the cabin, tell you more about this boat. So one of the nice features of this this boat is it's got the wireless charging up front here, makes charging your phone really convenient. It's got a killer stereo. We can't turn it on for copyright reasons, but when we get this stereo going, definitely top of the line. Also in the evenings, it's got some really cool accent lighting. This does have a lithium battery system. It does not have a generator. So I'll show you down in the cabin. It's got a pretty nice cabin with a bathroom and a bed. I'll show you here in just a moment. And today it's a really low tide here in Sarasota, Florida. I think they call it king tide today. So this is the lowest tide I've ever seen here in the Sarasota area. I've never seen the actual sandbar exposed like this, and I'll show you on the chart plot right here. Right now it is, I mean, we're like the lowest tide I've ever seen it out here by far. Here we've got the depth finder. So we're going about 3.5 miles. We want to stay in the canal right here, and after the hurricanes we don't know how much stuff has shifted around down there. So boating in the intercoastal here is a totally different animal with all the sandbars. I grew up boating on lakes in Arizona, which is a completely different style of boating. So I've been trying to be very respectful of these sandbars, because if you're going too fast and you catch one of these, it could do some serious damage to your boat. Now, one of the cool features this has on it is a sport exhaust. I'm going to press one button here. It's going to turn on the sport exhaust. You can hear it gets a little beefier. We just got out of the no wake. I'll give it a little gas here. A nice sound to it, but for noise reasons, I'm gonna just keep that off for right now. Also here in the cockpit, this does have the joystick, which I'll show you guys how this works when we bring the boat back to dock here in a moment. This has just been a game changer to make me not look like a fool when I'm pulling up at restaurants, docking my boat, and you've got everybody watching you. You know, back in the day, I grew up learning how to boat on a 2004 Formula 34 PC with the twin Merc 454s. Got some shallow water. It's giving me a low depth. 3.6 in the intercoastal waterway here. This is record low shallow waters here. But back in Arizona, I learned on a Formula 34 PC that had the twin 454s with no bow thrusters, which was a completely different animal, having all of that power and just the two throttles. So having this joystick just makes it so much easier to dock. It's a pretty expensive option, but I think it's definitely worth it. And I don't know if I would want to have another boat without the bow thrusters as well, because when I did lose my steering that one day, those bow thrusters saved me for sure. So the fuel tank on this is a little over 100 gallons on it. The longest I've been able to go was all the way up to Tampa and back. Pretty long run, about an hour and a half, 2 hours each way. And then of course, you know, depending on how quickly you go, it depends on how much fuel you'll use. We got a little wave here. So this is a good example of how well, I mean, that's a pretty small boat, but that's a good example of how well this boat takes wakes. Just came right through us. So here I'm looking at the engine hours, and I've got almost 98 hours on the starboard motor there, 96 on the port motor. And when I bought this boat, it had 40 hours on it, so I'm right at 60 hours total. So I feel like using this boat for 60 hours, I've learned a lot. And here I like to monitor my batteries as well. So you can go to the C zone right here. I'm gonna go to the control panel. I can see I've got 308 amp hours, so plenty of battery to run the AC. There's an AC down in the cabin that runs off the lithium batteries. Pretty incredible. So we are getting into some deeper waters here. I'm gonna run this up. Let's see how fast we can get this boat going, and we're gonna go under the Sarasota Bridge here. If you've never had a chance to visit Sarasota, Florida, one of the most beautiful cities in the world in my opinion. But let's try to see how fast we can get this Saxdor going here. that view. So the tide's a little bit lower, but I want to show you guys, this is kind of gnarly from the hurricane up here. You can see from Hurricane Helene or Milton, there is a pretty big boat that is still shipwrecked here in January of 2025. So you can see effortlessly with those twin Merc 300s, we were able to get up to just under 50 miles an hour with 2 full-grown male adults on board. When I do load it up with more people, it doesn't affect it much, maybe a mile an hour or so, but if I have like 6 people on here, it can be a little bit slower. It doesn't get up to speed quite as quick. And it's rated for, I think, 6 people out in the ocean and 9 people as long as you're within 75 miles of the shore, I believe is the regulation. So let's show you guys around the cabin here real quickly, just show you around the boat. It's about 33 feet 7 inches long, so not too big of a boat. But here I'm going to hit that skyhook button, and you'll see when I hit that, it's going to tell me, you know, propeller, do not engage skyhook when swimmers are present. We don't have any swimmers, so we're good to set that here. And you can see already these boats these motors are dancing around. So in 2025, I went and looked at the 2025 Saxdors. I really like that caramel color interior. The white is really nice too, but I was, you know, working numbers with my salesman just to see what it would cost to trade this for a 25. It was a pretty significant price difference, but the 25 has a little higher headroom, so I think, you know, the folks at Saxdor are paying attention. So I will point out though, like right back here, even at 6'2" with my hat on, I still have to duck down just a little bit where there was no ducking. Now, here we have the outdoor kitchen, a second row of seating, so you can have, you know, 3 people comfortably here, another 3 right here. We still have the back sun bed, and this configuration is supposed to switch to forward seating as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. That's one of the issues that I've been having. But this is the outside kitchen. We've got a Kenyan cooktop, little sink out here. I don't really use this too much, to be honest. I do use the refrigerator, so we've got a pull-out refrigerator right here. Little glass bottled water. I've been trying to do away from the plastic bottled water. Then we've got some nice drawer space here. Oh, they took I was looking for my American flag, and they did take that off before the hurricane. I didn't realize it was in that drawer. Huge thanks to my boat salesman, Jeremiah, for getting all the cushions put underground. Some of the boats at MarineMax did not make it. I got a photo sent to me where one of the racks fell over. Hurricane Milton was like a record hurricane for this area, so I'm really thankful that this boat did survive the hurricane. And you're seeing this all, this boat was outside during the hurricane, which is really a testament to the build quality of Saxdor as well. Here's the other, there's another refrigerator, pull-out refrigerator on this side. A little liquid death, the aluminum canned water in this one. And it, you know, there is some corrosion right here. I do want to point out, you know, this boat's been sitting outside by the sea, so some of these parts are already starting to kind of fade. Stuff we didn't have to deal with on freshwater lakes in Arizona. I'm learning about the salt water and the effect it has on stuff. Here we've got forward-facing seating. It's pretty comfortable overall. I could, you know, be really comfortable here. It's nice to have the cup holders here. Everybody that I've had on the boat has just raved about how much they've enjoyed it. And there is some storage below here as well. Little spot for, you know, fenders, life jackets, the 30 amp cord, all of that good stuff. Now, one of the complaints I have, I had a due bill list before I bought the boat, and they got everything on the list fixed except for one thing. It was a used boat, so I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. But these locking mechanisms were broke. If you see right here, see how they're like exposed? So when I push these down, this is supposed to come forward. This is not coming forward. And then we've got these other, you know, I can come from this angle it's stuck. So there's something wrong with these latching mechanisms. I just got an email from the service manager at MarineMax that there's other people with this same issue. Now in 2025, they had a more updated, more robust latching system, and the 25 that I looked at also had the diamond stitch on the interior as well. I really like that look with the diamond stitching. So I know they did do some big improvements for 25, but this 24, we're still working on getting parts. I've owned the boat for almost 6 months. They promised to get this fixed before I even bought the boat. That was part of the deal. So I'm a little disappointed that the seating configuration is stuck in this seat, but if this is the biggest problem I got, I'm doing really good. So, you know, you could pick apart any, you know, motorhome, boat, these things are gonna have problems. Here, so this is not in place right now. This is kind of hokey. I have it set back like this, but same thing. See these latches, it's just not. So this is supposed, there we go, actually there, it is working for a second. So here we can change the configuration. That's weird, this one randomly worked while it was on camera, but you could see I really had to struggle to get that. So now you can essentially sit 9 people forward facing, and then this is supposed to go forward, and then you have this table here in the middle. Now you can also put the table down, and you're supposed to be able to make it into like a really long bed, but I just haven't been able to figure that out because these latches aren't working properly. So I've been leaving it in just the standard position where I put this forward. So now that I moved it, crap, it's gonna be stuck again now. So, well, I just lost my rear sunbed. So I guess there's a way I can pull these 2 cords here. I'm gonna need Eli, all right, we're gonna jack with this later. So yeah, hopefully we can get this stuff fixed. I'll have to make you guys an update video. And that is one thing, you know, I will say Saxdor did build these boats. So, you know, for owners like myself, I think it's really important to be able to provide parts where people can get their boats fixed. Because right now, anybody with a 24 and older Saxdor 320 GTO that has these same latching mechanisms are probably dealing with the same headaches that I'm dealing with. So there's another really cool feature on this boat, and that's going to be the drop down swim platform. We've got 2 swim platforms. Now, I can't put the platforms down while the skyhook is going. That makes sense. You don't want swimmers out there while the engine's going, but it's super easy. You just hit this button right here, and then the lock button, and then put down the swimming hatch. I would want to drop anchor to do that. Oh, look at this. We got a little warning light here. Starboard engine shift actuator not working, service engine soon. So we're gonna have to get that going, and I think we've probably been running that skyhook for about 10 minutes, which you should be able to run it for hours in my opinion, but I don't want to break my steering again, so we're going to keep it rolling here. Now I want to show you guys down in the cockpit as well, and then I want to talk more about why I chose this boat over other boats out there. We're going to try to track down my salesman that helped me buy this boat. I worked probably 10 or 15 different boat salesmen. A lot of them, especially during COVID, were just trying to sell you whatever used boat they had in inventory. But Jeremiah definitely listened to what my needs were, how I wanted to use the boat. Asked a lot of questions that really made me think about how I'd be using this boat, and that's why we ended up settling on this. I was originally looking at a pre-owned Sea Ray Sundancer 320 with the triple outboards, a little bigger, more of a yacht-esque boat. This is more of a sport cruiser, but I ended up, this is a much lower price point than that Sundancer 320, and this really fits my needs. It's going to get better fuel mileage, and right now I'm using this boat more to, you know, entertain guests. I've been able to bring a lot of people from the industry out here. I've been out here with Dean Laux a few times, a good friend of the channel. He used to have an Axopar, so he really appreciates this boat, and you never know. I think one of Dean's buddies just bought a Saxdor 320 down in Naples here a couple weeks ago, so you never know if we're going to see our buddy Dean out here on the water. And those of you that aren't familiar with Dean Laux, Laux. Dean Laux is a world-renowned artist that paints all of the Liberty coaches. He was a huge name in the powerboat industry before he started painting all of the Liberty coaches, and we recently did a video talking about how Dean's partnership with Liberty Coach has pushed all of the exterior paint designs in the luxury motor coach industry. So definitely worth checking out those videos if some of you boat people out there want to learn about high-end motor coaches. That's what this channel is all about. We're usually chasing the $2-3 million motor coaches, trying to find you guys the best deals on coaches. But when I bought this boat, I feel like I owe it to you guys to share with you guys an honest review here. So we've seen the exterior of the boat, but I think you guys want to see down in the interior cabin. So let's go dock this boat. I'm going to show you how the joystick works when we dock the boat, and then we'll take a look downstairs here. So we've got some pretty rough waters out there today, but I want to show you the joystick. This is one of my favorite options on this boat. It makes docking and undocking the boat so much easier. So I'm going to untie here real quick. Right away, I'm going to just use the joystick. Just makes it really effortless. We have the bow thrusters as well. So we've got some pretty rough waters here with the high tides today, but want to show you guys how easy it is to just spin this boat around. So I'm going to just press the joystick or turn it. I'm not pushing it forward or back, but basically we can just do a 180 without really losing course. You can see some pretty choppy water, pretty windy today. And we're a little bit, there is a pretty heavy tide rolling in, so we are a little bit down tide from where we came out, but I still did a full 180, and now I'm doing about a 270 here. And now I can start backing up the boat while it's twisting as well. So now we're in reverse and twisting. This is a little different than what I'm used to here, having this king tide today. We definitely never had waters like this at the lakes in Arizona. Eli, you all good, buddy? So now that I'm in the marina, I'm going to spin this boat around to back it in front of this other boat here. I mean, just really effortless, where before we're working with twin throttles and it's easy to line up with the dock. Boom, and that easy, we can just tie off and keep it rolling. You can see he's grabbing the rope there. If you want to just get a shot of him real quick. If you don't mind being on camera, we're just filming a video here. Oh. Boom. They've got some super expensive boats. I think that's an Azimuth over there, and it's a pretty good looking Azimuth behind us. That stuff's probably going to be more in range with the $2-3 million luxury motor coaches that we usually are filming, but maybe someday we'll be able to get on one of these big boats like this and review these. Definitely a life goal right there. There's the man that's going to sell it to me right there. What's good, buddy? Come on board here. So this is the guy that helped me decide the Saxdor was the right boat for me. Jeremiah Long here at MarineMax. Good to see you, buddy. So,
thanks, man.
You were the one, I was telling them earlier, I worked probably 10 or 15 boat salesmen to find the right boat.
Yep.
You definitely listen. So Jeremiah told me, first thing, he's like, you're not going to like this boat because you're too tall for it. But somehow I arm wrestled you and ended up with this boat. What was I looking for? How did we end up with this boat?
Well, the very first thing you notice, the boat has unquestionably a unique look. It's sporty, it's stand out, and to be frank, for you, Andrew, that was something that was important to you.
Yeah.
You obviously are a big face in media. You talk a ton about quality and the look of things that people are jumping into, and it stood out to you. Unquestionably, on the water, this boat outruns a lot of boats in its class. It runs nicer in rough water than boats in its class, and it has a profile that it doesn't matter if we're sitting at the Hyatt, the Ritz, or any marina in all of South Florida, it stands apart from the rest of the crowd. I mean, it does. That's the truth.
I've gotten complimented on this boat everywhere I go. Anytime I pull up to a restaurant, a marina, people are like, hey, what is that? How do you like it? Even here, you know, at MarineMax, we're getting lots of people walk up to you. That's definitely, it's got the cool factor for sure. It's got the cabin. Now, we were looking at some other, you know, bigger boats, but what, you know, in this price range, these new, what do these run new?
You're spending about $350,000 to $400,000 depending on options on a brand new 32.
And I got this a little pre-owned, so got a little bit of a deal on it. It had 40 hours on it. But what other boats, you know, in that $350 to $400 price range new, what other boats would you guide me towards or think would be a good boat for me?
Well, see, that's the tricky part on my shoes is I kind of can't. Because I don't have a lot that I can say, oh, I can give you the maneuvering capabilities, a cabin, a lithium battery, the speed to ride. I kind of stumble. We have to start, we're not just pulling options anymore, we're pulling whole segments away. I have to pull a cabin completely out of the conversation and say, let's go look at a 31 Sea Ray. Or I have to pull joystick completely out of the conversation because it just becomes too expensive. And so I have to give up a lot. If we're gonna stay sub 400 for a new boat, we can't have that conversation with a 32 Sea Ray, the Sundancer with a cabin. We're not there. We're 25 to 30% more money immediately.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I appreciate you helping me find this. Now, the joystick is a pretty expensive option. I can't live without it now. Now that I've had it, I love it. How expensive of an option is that on this boat?
On the Saxdor specifically, they do their optioning a little interesting. Again, we're kind of, it's European heritage, but it rounds out to about a $35,000 upgrade exclusive to this boat. And we'd be kind of remiss if I didn't point out, one of the things this has, and it's saved you and it will other people, you've got a bow thruster. Super, super uncommon to have a joystick and bow thruster. And so when you've got a boater who's newer to like tides and wind, saltwater environment that frankly becomes really dynamic. You're jumping into marinas, the tiny basin openings, the things like that. This boat, it can outmaneuver any other 32. It really can. This boat can outmaneuver everything. You can deal in inches instead of feet with a Saxdor.
Now, we were talking about a 320 Sundancer. It's kind of the next step up from this for me. That's going to have a little wider beam.
Yep.
How is maneuverability on the Sundancer going to be compared to this?
I'm going to be completely honest and upfront. The boat's beam, its height, it's going to maneuver a little bit more sluggishly. You're going to have just a touch more planning in your mind as you're trying to put that boat into a slip, etc. Right now, we've got just a touch of a breeze. Thank God to your good cameras, you can't feel it. That breeze is going to catch that higher profile, and it's something you're going to have to plan for if that's ever a boat that you find yourself on a lot.
Now, what about like today? I just learned for the first time, I'm new to the ocean boating, but Eli was telling me it's a king tide today, and when we were bringing this boat back in, the tide shifting and it was moving it like I've never seen before. How would the Sundancer or a larger boat handle the heavier tide? Would the heavier boat move less with the bigger tide, or is there a big difference there?
Once you're completely opposed, like beam to the tide, so it's running perpendicular into one side of the hull or the other, they should move at the same space. A bigger boat will move slower, so that more sluggish handling on a joystick becomes a benefit. The wind is not going to accelerate a bigger boat as much, and the tide is not going to grab or change that boat's momentum as quickly, so that's going to be an advantage on that boat.
Yeah, and that 320 Sundancer has a much bigger cabin, a little bit bigger sitting areas, more headroom right here. There's definitely a lot of advantages. I think that may, or the 370, depending on how many of you guys watch these YouTube videos. You got to have something to strive for.
For sure.
Might be the next step up. Now, what about a step down? Like, I know they've got the 270 Saxdor, quite a bit less. That was around the 200 price point. Why wouldn't we go in that direction?
Well, so that's a boat that, so your joystick option, we've talked heavily about that. The joystick goes away. You don't even have an option for it there. So that's more of like a family starting out. The cabin doesn't have an AC option at all. It's purely a place for someone to pop out of the weather. So that's on your rainy days, we just need to hide, or maybe a young child just wants to take a quick nap. That boat does not accommodate, to be honest, bigger people like you and I. It just doesn't do that. It's a much narrower boat dropping down in the 8-foot range. And so it's a newer boat. It's definitely attempting to hit a price point or hit storage limitations that a 32 just simply isn't capable. We get a lot of capability and option availability on a 32 for its price, and a 27 is trying to give up a lot of options, give up a lot of room in exchange for both the price and occasionally that boat's going to be trailered. This boat, we're just not going to do that.
Yeah, single engine versus twin engines. How fast is that 270? I think it's got a single 300 versus two 300s. How much speed is it going to be? Because it's a lighter boat, how much is that going to be affected?
It's going to be at least 15 mile an hour. That boat's going to drop well into the low 40s. When you've got a load on it, its top speed might be in the high 30s. That's going to have a pretty significant, whereas the boat we're standing on, as you grow in size, they become less affected by how many people you put on the deck. So this boat might lose 2 mile an hour if we put 8 of us on here.
Yeah.
Whereas that 27, even if you put 4 on there, it's going to notice that weight a lot more.
Okay, that's understandable. And I just saw on Naughty Styles YouTube channel, I'm a big fan of Naughty Styles, they reviewed the new 340 GTWA, I believe. What's the story on that boat and how does that differ from this?
We're on a GTO, their open style boat, and they build a GTC of this boat, which is an enclosed coupe. It doesn't change the cabin. What the 34 did is put a tremendous emphasis on Americans that want bigger cabin space. Hey, we're buying this boat with a much stronger eye to that cabin, so it gives up deck space and the functionality in exchange for some of that capability. Changes a little behind me as well, but that boat was never born to be an open. It was born to always be a coupe. That's the idea behind the 34. Grows a little bit width length, a couple of things there, but you're chasing a 34 because you want the cabin.
Okay, so that's going to be a bigger cabin than this?
Yep.
What's the price point on that boat?
It definitely rises a little bit. We actually haven't even gotten our first one yet. Debuted it at the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show, but that boat is going to creep into the 400s.
Okay. And, you know, in Europe, I go on Saxdor's website. It says that this boat new is like $203,000, starting at $203,000. Why is it saying that it's so much less expensive on Saxdor's website than when we actually touch down here in the U.S.?
It really comes down to cultural differences on these. In America, we kind of generally, even in the car market and other stuff, we advertise this stuff as well equipped or highly equipped. Americans like to see with everything, this is it. In Europe, they don't really, the culture is not really that style. So actually, if you can believe this, the 32 Saxdor is built base with a single 300 horsepower motor, just like what you saw in that 27. They don't chase the 50 plus, 55, 56, 58 mile an hour boats the way Americans do, and they're totally happy, maybe not even getting on plane in some cases. And so when they're showing that, they show the boat completely base power, no options, no flooring, no summer kitchen AC, etc. And those options build up tremendously. Again, it's more of a domestic thing to see those options build up on that level. So that's what you're seeing there. There's actually electrical differences on the boat, but I don't think your viewers probably care that much about the Hertz rating. There's some differences there as well.
Yeah, so you add a lithium battery system, a cabin AC, the Simrad screens. Is that going to be standard on those?
It's actually not.
Really?
It's really not. So in a lot of their cases, not that they don't care, but they don't necessarily expect a GPS right out of the gate. A lot of these boats were built in the Polish Fords or designed there. They're not necessarily even assuming that the Saxdor is going to make its way into a saltwater environment. It may, but it doesn't have to in their environment.
Any other boats? You know, I'm always calling you, hey, what's the next deal? I'm ready to, always ready to trade up if the deal's right. Now, we were talking about a 320 Sea Ray Sundancer might be the next step up. The 400 GTO Saxdor might be another step up, but I think that gets quite a bit more expensive. What's the price point on the 400 GTO Saxdor?
So they're hanging out in the 600 to 750 range. You've got a lot of engine options, gyro, some options that are pretty impactful there, but you can get an extremely nice 400 for sub 700K.
And the new Sundancers?
If we're jumping up and we're comparing that to a 370, that boat's going to be pushing $1 million.
What about a Sundancer 320?
320 is going to be in the 500 to 600K range right now.
Okay, so the 320 is going to be comparable price range to that 400 GTO Saxdor.
It gets very close.
Now, what about availability? Like how easy is it? Because when I was looking for these, there was not a lot of Saxdors. That was about 6 months ago. I think inventories shifted in favor of the buyer a little bit since then. I've seen a few more Saxdors out there than I did 6 months ago. What's the current availability on these?
The 32 Saxdors, it's okay. let me put it this way. There is not even one boat for every 3 states in the U.S. right now for a brand new 32. We maybe 13 total on the ground. 400 Saxdors are much worse than that. Not only are there no 400 Saxdors on the ground, they're sold out for about the next 5 months. And we see about a 6-week lag from the time a boat is done to the time we actually physically put it in like our dealership lot. We're ready to deliver it. So 6 to 7 months on a 400. If you're happy with the options on a 32, there's about a dozen to choose from. Baker's dozen in the US right now.
Okay, and now I see a lot of you guys here. A lot of you guys that are in the business have these Boston Whalers. Is there any Boston Whalers comparable to this? Are we going to jump up a lot in price, or what's the story with Boston Whaler? You have a Boston Whaler personally?
I do. I have a Boston Whaler center console, and it's an ease of use sort of thing. But we try really hard, like with you. Seriously, when I think part of the reason we sort of became friends was, hey man, what's your mission? What are you gonna do with this boat? How are you gonna use the boat? And whalers really begin to bias towards the fishing folks. They do. They build a boat called a Conquest Series. It's enclosed, it has a cabin, 32.5-foot boat. That boat is about the 600K mark, very comparable in price to the 32 Sea Ray. But that boat doesn't lend itself to fun. And I have to be honest with you, when your drone is looking at our water right now, it's flat, it's blue-green, there's sandbars everywhere. That's a huge component of what we do. So if you're gonna do that in a whaler, you're gonna switch to something open that's gonna give up most of its cabin feature, give up a lot of that stuff. The Saxdor has a niche of the market that whaler doesn't cross-compete in. Whaler builds a very quality boat, but it's not a direct competitor. Does that answer the question appropriately?
Absolutely. Now, is there any direct competitors? I get so much information from you every time we talk, so I'm always trying to extract the good information. What, if you were in my shoes, what else, we've had this conversation over and over, but what else is gonna compete with a Saxdor? Axopar, what other boats out there?
Definitely. So Axopar is gonna be one of the leaders. In fact, the owner of Saxdor founded Axopar in his past, and then he sold it off. Now, I'd like to believe there's a little change in his thinking because he actually has a Saxdor Academy, quite literally opened up a training school academy developing Saxdor. So I think some thinking is changing, but that's definitely a direct competitor. And there's a few others out there. Like there's a company called Beneteau, a French company that's come in and they build like a Swift trawler, and some of the Beneteau brands are a direct competitor here. They even occasionally are a little less. You really give up a lot of ride and usability if you're chasing a Beneteau. Saxdor has a little bit of an edge, I think you found this, to the aesthetics over Axopar, its competitor. So you're gonna find some differences, but in the price range at least, Beneteau, Axopar, a couple of others are gonna compete there. Maybe Regal a little bit. Their 33 XO is a different style. It doesn't have an open bow, but it is outboards and it's close in price range. So you can you find this a lot in the world of boats. There's almost 3,000 manufacturers that exist in the US, and let's compare this to cars, right? You and I love cars, we've had this conversation. There's only 400 or 500 car manufacturers in the US. And so there's so many more because boats are specifically chasing a niche. It's good for buyers that want to dial in exactly what they want to do, but it can make it a little confusing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that. And you don't sell all those boats here, so I appreciate you talking about all of the different boats out there. Now, what boats do you guys sell here at MarineMax?
We're very big for brands like Saxdor, Sea Ray, Boston Whaler. We get into some yacht brands displayed behind us, Azimut, Cruiser, Galleon, MJM is a custom build, Aquila Catamaran. So we pull from about 10 to 12, depending on the store, brands that we can deal with here.
Man, that green boat behind us really caught my attention. I've been eyeballing that. Now, I know that's way out of my price range. Is that boat available, or what's the story on that boat?
That's a brand new owner, and if you can believe, they bought that boat sight unseen at the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show. It's a 48 Verve from Azimut. Interestingly, it actually lives in the segment idea of the same boat you have. So very much that would be like if this style of boating, a small cabin, a lot of day boating was your style, and you really wanted to maintain those aesthetics as you grew, that's about a $2.2 million version, about 3 times the weight, and again, it's a 48 footer, so another 16 feet, 50% longer. It kind of does exactly what you do here, just on a bigger scale. And you got to think about your sandbars a little bit more. You're not quite as quick to a run to a restaurant on the turn of a key as you grow to 48 feet, but we're talking the same language.
Yes, sir. Well, that's something to aspire to someday when I get a couple more zeros in the bank account.
Definitely.
I'm a little ways away from that. But man, I appreciate you taking the time to share some of your wisdom with us. Is there any other wisdom? Any, you know, boaters or folks out there that are maybe thinking about getting in boating, any advice that you have for new boaters out there?
Well, I gotta say, and this is throwing the emphasis back on you, people who spend time checking the reviews, watching how these things, getting into the videos. There's a tremendous amount of knowledge available to buyers if you're willing to do the research and look. It doesn't matter if it's the recreational vehicle, the RVs that you cut your teeth on, or it's boats. That's one thing. Do what you did. Go talk to 10 different salespeople and pick one you feel you can trust, because there are so many models to choose from, and service is a tremendous component, even occasionally a sore issue with you and I, but the ability to find a place that can service what you're chasing in multiple locations is something that doesn't exist in boats. It's very localized. So the reason you want to trust the person you're buying it from is because they're who's going to answer your phone calls. That's king. And a boat that can be serviced places that you're going to go boating. Those are two things, along with the research ahead of time, that are just going to change how you experience your boating lifestyle.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I'm impressed with the overall experience here at MarineMax. I tried to have low expectations because MarineMax is like, it's the biggest boat dealership in the country, kind of like a La Mesa RV. And, you know, in the RV industry, we just have low expectations. It's hard to get stuff repaired. But overall, other than this latch system, you guys have gotten everything taken care of swiftly on this boat. Well, I don't know what the deal is with these latches. I mean, I'm not able to use all the different configurations. What's the story on that?
It's more than I feel like I can jump into it, and I'm not deflecting. It's just, I don't know their design thoughts when Saxdor put this together. I do know that our clientele definitely struggled with them, and as a result, Saxdor rebuilt the seats. So this is something we'll probably continue to work through on the first couple of years of these Saxdors, and definitely as the new 32s come to market, the late 24s and the 25s, that experience is going to be a little bit better, albeit they don't lay down and configure quite as cool as these are supposed to, though these we struggle with the full ability to lay down. The new seats can't do that. So it's a tip of the hat to these ones, but we found out that unless you were using two people, they're basically, you can't change the configuration outside of two experienced people.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And yeah, I did look at the new 25. I drove over, I was working numbers on a 25. I drove over to like Fort Lauderdale and looked at a 25 Saxdor with the updated seats, and it was a lot beefier cables. I wish we could figure out a way to update this to have those. I don't know if
eventually we'll just wear them out enough that at some point in life, these are probably, hopefully, secured very well to the deck, but at some point in life I could see some older boats getting retrofitted with the new modules is the best. There's probably some fiberglass work involved. They probably are hesitant to do that because they don't want to put an owner on the sidelines for 6 months. But I gotta be frank, that's probably the only right answer.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and we're working through it. And hey, if that's the biggest problem I got, I'm doing really good. So I've had to, you know, just work with it. It didn't quite do everything I was hoping for, but still, everything else on this boat has been fantastic. So Jeremiah, really appreciate you. And I've been telling you, when you get your YouTube channel fired up, you've got so much information in that brain over there. I'm sure the folks on YouTube would love to learn from you. So whenever you get a camera fired up, we'll be subscribing to your channel.
It'll debut right here with you. Thank you for being seriously an awesome owner. You're one of the most pleasant guys. Going to Tampa with you was an amazing treat. Doing those getaways, I hope we do the next one. Seriously, you're an awesome owner. Thanks for taking the time to share the experience.
Likewise. Thank you, buddy.
Hey, cool. Appreciate you.
Cool. So I know you probably want to see in the cabin here. Let's take a quick step down here. Now, it isn't quite tall enough for me to stand up, but I can very easily sit down. Now, you'll notice this wooden door over here is actually the door that goes into the head, and I usually leave it like this to give more space down here. We got a lot of light coming through here. Can be a double-edged sword. There's no shades right here, so if you do want to take a nap in the daytime, you still do have that sunlight coming through, but I have put a couple towels over that outside if I want to keep the sunlight out. And then, sleeping I usually wouldn't put my head in this way because I like to have a little more headroom. So I usually put my feet in this way. Shout out to Brooklyn Bedding. We've got one of these knit blankets in here. But you've got, you know, just enough room to take a nap if you need. You do have the emergency hatches right here to be able to get out. And then you'll notice some cool indirect lighting down here. Lots of cool touches like that. And then the head, you know, I can't stand up all the way, but you know, it's you know, definitely you can get your business done if you need. And then if I want to, you know, have some privacy, I don't think I've ever closed this, to be totally honest, while I'm inside. I've had guests want to have it closed, but boom. Now I do have to compliment the style of the sink right here and a little TP there. And then there is this of seat that'll go over your toilet. So if you want to just have a nice place to sit down here and you're not sitting directly on your toilet, small little mirror here, no shower inside of this boat, but nice to have a little restroom, place to sit down, or a place to take a nap. All right, so overall, I'm pretty impressed with the Saxdor 320 GTO. Looking forward to seeing when we can get these seat latches fixed. But I know today's video was a lot different than most videos, but I appreciate all of you that are subscribing to the channel and liking these videos. I hope you're all having a great day. Thanks again.